Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome to Your Best Life with Lisa. Taking care of a child when you're still a child is no easy task. It's even harder when you lack the proper support and mindset to handle the adult challenges of life. You may feel unprepared, scared, and lonely, and not know what to do to get your life back on track. Several studies have examined the impact of pregnancy and parenthood in teens. Life outcomes for teenage mothers and their children vary. Other factors may be more important than the age of the mother at birth. Teenage women who are pregnant or mothers are 7 times more likely to commit suicide than other teenagers. Today, we're going to talk to Kendra Hall about her personal experiences as a teen mom, homelessness and domestic violence, and how she faced it head on and she created her best life. Let's get started. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome back. Whether you're an empath or not, you have to work at making yourself happy, right? It's really about knowing yourself. A lot of it is really about knowing yourself. Books, friends, whatever you need. We're all going through stuff. We can all use extra support. You have to be brave enough to admit to yourself that I have the wrong people in my life. Then you have to be brave enough to want to make a change. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Your Best Life with Lisa. Let's welcome Kendra Hall. Kendra is a mother of 4 children, 3 of whom are now adults, a devoted advocate for young women, sharing her own life experiences, like being a teenage mother of 3 children by the age of 18, overcoming homelessness and domestic violence. She is best known for helping, and tenacious spirit is very comfortable sharing her own life experience with others on a one-on-one basis to help young women connect to the resources that they need. In her book, Dropping Jewels, Guiding Principles to Help Girls Live Their Best Life, you will meet Corinne, who became a mother when she was 14, and she was competing for spots in people's lives, not realizing that hers was the only spot that mattered. The book shares guiding principles to help girls live their best life. Will give you the tools you need to navigate through the challenges of teenage parenthood successfully. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to have you, and I'm really excited to share your story. You have an incredible story, and I'm thrilled that we have all this time to share it.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
So I think what I really want to start with is, I like to start with the positive. It's all about positivity in my life, is that you said, I don't compete for spots. I am the spot. Let's share that right out of the gate with the viewers, right? What does that mean to you?
That means that I rely on my inner self. I rely on me. I am my own person as opposed to relying on someone else's energy. I think a lot of times we have to figure out who we are. What's our authentic self look like? And we have to honor our authentic self when we find out who we are. So I definitely don't compete for spots. We're so unique. And why not celebrate just our individuality?
Well, I think that's incredible. And of course, we want to share and share how you got there. So let's take it back a little bit, because, you know, we have people on the show all the time that share their stories, and we want to make sure that we're sharing the story of, you know, where you've been, how you got there, and where you are today, like how you got there, right? So let's start with, when I first started talking to you, you were like, telling me about your dad, and you were saying all these things. I was like, wow, your dad was really involved. So tell me your story when you were a young child and how your dad impacted who you are.
So for me, I grew up in upper middle class. I had 2 parents, 2-parent household, and it was a very educationally oriented household. There was nothing that didn't revolve around education. We had to read the dictionary every day.
I mean, that doesn't sound so bad.
I feel like there was a lot going on. We had to read the dictionary. There wasn't much time.
It was you and how many siblings?
It was myself and 3 other siblings. So there's 4 of us. And after homework, there was more homework to do, because my mother is a retired teacher, and at the time, she was full blown into teaching, and everything revolved around a lesson. So she felt as though for us to be successful in life, both of my parents felt like we have to know knowledge. We have to be
They wanted you
Well-rounded.
They wanted you to be the walking, talking dictionary.
They did.
And I don't think anybody remembers this because I'm really going to date myself here. But there's a thing called an encyclopedia. Do people even use that anymore?
Okay.
I don't think so. I've just dated myself, okay? Because I used to have an encyclopedia.
Yes, and so we had encyclopedias, and that was a huge thing. So I love that you said that. So when we got our encyclopedias, we had to write papers each week on something that we picked out of the encyclopedia. So our parents were, yes.
Second, that sounds like school. You're absolutely right. That sounds like something we would do in school.
It is.
Even though, I mean, when I first heard it, because I know your story, and
Yes.
someone's listening now, they're probably like, well, what's wrong with that? Like, they learned a lot. You're really smart, which you are, right?
Thank you. The problem to me was the fact that everything was very rigid, and on top of the boot camp education type of mentality, which is great for certain kids, they can really thrive within that type of environment. But every child is different. So for me, I didn't really take to it, even though I learned the lessons because I had to. I was really resentful that I had to do all these different educational activities, and I couldn't spend time with my friends.
So wait, but I know you're saying you did a lot of education, didn't you? When you really engaged in the church as well?
Oh my goodness. So we were in church. Myself in particular, I was the youth group leader. So I was in church Mondays. I was on the usher board. I was one of the aides. So on Monday, I was ushering. On top of, I was in the youth group, the youth group choir. So I was singing in the choir. On Sundays, we would evangelize and go to several different churches, go out into the community. So it was just nonsense. Wednesdays we had Bible study, teen Bible study, and so on and so forth. So
when did you sleep? I mean, I'm exhausted. Hello, I'm like, what? When did you sleep? Did your parents let you sleep, or did you have to stand up and just like?
No.
Like
It's that and that's the thing is that they didn't believe that we should take so much time that's unfocused. They wanted our time to be focused time. They wanted us to maximize our moments, but in the way that they wanted us to maximize our moments.
I like that though. I mean, there's a lot of studies that we probably could spend the entire show talking about, maximizing moments versus not maximizing moments, right? And I don't know, a very smart woman who happens to be my mom once told me that how kids turn out is just really luck of the draw, you know what I mean? So I don't think that there's a study that we can look at that says, how's your kid gonna turn out, right? So, because you were one of four.
Correct.
What number were you?
I was number 2. And so even for my siblings, they took to it. So if we brought back anything less than a A or a B, even if we got a B, it was, why did you get a B in our classes? So they were just very much very rigid parents when it came to education. And on top of that, we all had to play instrument. So that was because my parents were not able to play instruments as children for whatever reason. Usually I believe it was for financial reasons. They said that each of their children has to play instrument. There was no discussion about it. You pick something and you stick with it, and you have to practice at least an hour a day. So that was another thing that we had to adhere to.
So an hour a day of practicing an instrument.
Yes.
All this extra classwork, digging the encyclopedia, digging the dictionary. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of liking it because it's like your parents really motivated you to set your bar really, really high, right?
They did. They were very much into being excellent. And so another thing on top of those schoolwork.
Wait, there was more.
There was more. So we had to do extracurricular activities. So we had, not just in school. So at school we had to pick an extracurricular activity. Mine was dance. I was big in dance. Mm-hmm. And after school we had to not only, so the instrument lessons didn't just extend to school. We took private lessons after school in certain days. And then we had to pick another activity that we did outside of school. And I picked drama. So I love to act. So I took private lessons.
So you really,
yes,
and so you really had a very structured childhood.
I did. I even volunteered at playhouses so we could see the plays. My parents wanted us to be very well-rounded children, so they made sure we were into everything.
Now, on top of that too, where they were so, into your education, were they also that way? Like, did you have to work out? Did they want you to pay attention to what you were eating, good healthy habits?
Yes.
Did they instill that into you as well?
They did. That was huge for my mother. She did not want us to get to a point where we were. Her mother. Let's to even say more. Her mother had her wear a girdle as a young person. So, right.
What? You
Yes.
mean
As a preteen.
to be
Correct.
skinny?
Yes.
Ooh.
So
My stomach hurts just thinking about it. I can't even. Anyway, so all right.
Yes.
So here you are. You're
Right.
16.
I was actually. This is early on.
This is early on. Okay,
Yes.
so you're early on, and then your dad is it really your dad or both? It sounds like it was
It's both of my parents, but my father was I would say the main issue with that I had was he was that person who was extremely controlling. He would go through. He didn't trust me for whatever reason, and so he would go through my trash. He would have surprise book bag checks. So there was just no trust. It was almost like I felt like I was in a boot
You were
camp
like in a
all
boot
day.
camp.
All day, just an everyday
No, you
boot
were.
camp.
It wasn't like
Like it's not up for
surprise. I'm
discussion.
checking your book bag. What's going to fall out of there? God, if I
Right.
did that to my son right now, he'd be like, "What are you doing?" Like, I don't even check his cell phone.
Right.
I start out on trust. So your father didn't start out on trust. He started out on, I don't trust you, and you're going to prove me why I shouldn't trust you. That's what it sounds like.
That's exactly how it felt. That's exactly how it felt. I felt like he was, he didn't. I felt like at the time that he didn't really care about me. That was one of the things I would yell at the time. I would have my serious tantrums at times, and I'd slam the door. Nobody loves me. I would yell that out because I just felt like it was so much pressure, and that nothing I could do was going to be good enough.
Isn't that interesting? I'm just going to stop for 1 second there because we talk about love languages, and we don't understand what that means until we're older, I think, we talk about love languages and how people show love. And, to me, your dad was really trying to show you love, right? He was trying to show
do
you
feel
love,
like that.
right? He was the one that was saying, do this, be the best, be smart. And you took it as my dad didn't love me.
Correct.
Interesting.
It's exactly how I just felt as though there was no place for me. I didn't have a place of peace. I couldn't go to school and have peace. I couldn't go home and have peace. So I just felt as though, where would I find this peace at? And I wound up finding it in a relationship at a very, very early age for a temporary period. So I found a mental out. And I think that that's what can happen. You find a distraction from your everyday life just to kind of cope with what you're dealing with at times.
I love that, a mental out. Yeah, we all kind of do mental outs, right? Some people
Yes.
do mental outs using alcohol. Some people use mental outs using drugs. It's all different mental outs. Some people just do mental outs watching movies,
Right.
because that's their way of getting out of their life. So you kind of wanted to get out of, you wanted to get out of your life, so to speak.
I did. I can't say that. Thinking back about it now, I truly did. It was miserable because I just felt as though I
You
had
felt
no.
unloved. That's
Right.
what everybody.
Unloved.
Unloved. Well, the
Truly.
one thing that we want in life is what? We want
We
love.
want love and want acceptance.
We want love, acceptance, and I'm even add one more thing. We want appreciation, right? We want to feel
Right.
valued. We want to feel like we're treasured in our own capacity. But, we started the show by talking about how you're your person, right?
Correct.
So you, through this whole experience, this whole journey, put you on this thing to see that we have to love ourselves.
Correct.
Deep down inside. That's who
Right.
we are. But
We
you didn't
can't-
know that.
I didn't know.
You didn't know that when you're 16 years old. No one knows that when they're
no.
16. We knew
No.
that.
Yes.
Well, we could sell that secret, and then everybody would understand and make everyone's life so much easier, right?
I agree. And for me, this even happened. All of these things were happening to me super early. So I got pregnant at 13. So for me, I'm just.
So you meet the
starting
guy.
out. At 12, I met him, and we started to, if you want to call it dating, which was really sneaking around at wherever we could at school and libraries and church and so forth. But I was 12 when we started to sneak around and try to see each other. And that really was a great distraction for me at the time. In my mind, it was, oh yeah, this is great. I have somebody who actually values me, who wants to listen to what I have to say and actually thinks it's amazing. So I really was I was feeding off of his energy, and that's a lot of times what we do. I learned, in these relationships, you're feeding off of energy because you don't realize that you can feed off your own energy. So
I know, but it's so interesting you say that, because I remember the first time I think a man paid attention to me. And my big joke is there was a period in my life where if a man said hi to me at Wawa, I thought it was a marriage proposal. I'd be like, oh, yep, I do. You know what I mean? Because I had such low self-esteem at one point in my life that it was like, oh God, he must want to marry me. That's why he's saying hello to me. It was this, and it's interesting though, but that's why I love doing the show, is because we share those things that go through our minds that nobody really wants to talk about. Nobody really wants to admit that you were so happy that this, at 13, which is such a young age to be starting to date. Note to people, I still think 13 is young to date. I swear.
I do too.
There's nothing good that can come out of being 12 or 13 that can date. My son's like, Mom, you're so over the top. I'm like, nothing. And he's 16 and I still don't think you should date, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway. So yeah, I think that, we're so excited when someone pays attention to us.
Right. And they're paying
You
attention.
were eating that up.
I was eating up the
That was
attention.
like your candy.
It was, and it's paying attention to you without the criticism. So now you feel like everything you do is lovely. And where do you get to feel like everything you do is lovely, right?
I'm perfect. You can always tell when a girl met a guy and she's really happy. She walks around campus, right? She's like, look, my hair is so good. I look good, right? Because that's what it does.
Exactly.
It boosts our self-esteem.
It boosts our self-esteem.
And then it's actually chemically proven that it makes us feel better. So then we're like, So
Right.
you're 12,
I'm 12.
dating this guy,
Yeah.
feeling good about yourself.
Yes, and he was a year older than I was, so he wasn't much older, but he had a different, more experience than I did. And so I was, at the time, I was a virgin, of course, very young. We decided that we were going to skip school and I was going to lose my virginity at 13.
You decided it? Like you sat down and had a discussion?
We actually had a talk on the phone.
Okay.
Because we were talking about marriage and how we were gonna get married and he was going to move me into his grandmother's house down south. And
Wait, you were 13.
we were 13. I believe turned 13 around
So
that
he was
time.
pulling the old, I'm going to say anything I can to get you to agree to this trick.
Right.
Ladies, that's
Yes.
a trick. Well, actually, I shouldn't say ladies, because you know what, now women do it to men and women, you know what I mean? Probably
Yes.
more like, oh yeah, you're the best thing ever. I wanna be with you forever.
Yes. And so what I didn't know, which was a twist, is that he planned to get me pregnant. Right. That was his plan, to get me pregnant. And
He
so
planned it?
He did.
Okay.
Right. So he planned to get me pregnant, and I had no clue what was going on. I'm just kind of like la 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 la. In his mind, he wanted this. He really felt as though we were going to get married. In his mind, he's 14 years old. So in his mind, he's made this fantasy into his own reality. Even though he said he still wanted to get what he wanted to get, I think he really was. He just was clouded. We're kids, so he's not thinking clearly. And so I wind up having sex with him, skipped school, got pregnant. So before I was even knew I was pregnant, he was telling everybody I was pregnant. So it was a very, very hard and interesting
I can't even imagine.
time.
I know.
So-
I mean, you're looking back, and sometimes we do that. We
Yes.
look back at our past and we think, whew, and we kind of chuckle a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's
serious. It's serious
serious.
stuff
Like-
that people think, you don't know what a person's thought process is, but you're giving them, that's just the part of when I say about competing for other people's spots, and you are the spot, you're giving somebody so much power when you're sleeping with them, number one, unprotected. So you don't really know what's going to happen. You're giving away your power when you're saying, I want to please a person, and you're not thinking of pleasing yourself. So I think that at the time I was just people pleasing, and I just said, okay, let's do it, and not thinking about the repercussions of what was going on, especially at that age.
How scary.
It was very scary. The scariest part, I would say, was telling my parents at the time.
You know, I can't imagine what it was like to tell your parents, because your dad was doing backpack checks.
Yes,
He couldn't check where you were all the time. It wasn't a time where we had the same way we do it now, like the apps. You can know
Right.
where your kids are all the time. That wouldn't work. But
Right.
So tell me, what was it like to tell you, like, how scared were you? Do you remember that day?
I remember the day.
Like, for the rest of your life,
I literally remember that day for the rest of my life. I just felt like there was a cloud on top of me. Like I felt a fog, like felt like I was sleepwalking almost. And I remember walking into the foyer and knowing that I had to say something because I had been hiding this pregnancy for so many months. And I probably was maybe 6 months or so by the time that I told my parents.
Wow. So wait, you hid your pregnancy?
Yes, for a long time.
You hid your pregnancy for 6 months?
Yes, yes.
So for 6 months, you knew you were pregnant, he knew you were pregnant, who else knew you were pregnant?
Everybody at school.
So, and you really believe your parents didn't know?
No, they didn't know. They didn't know. Because it's just because of their reaction, I know they did not know.
Okay.
Because my mother literally fell out when she found out. So I know she did not know that.
What was it like, though, before we talk about telling your parents, what was it like? I think it's more meaningful what it must have been like to hold that in for 6 months and go to school every single day knowing that somebody knew your secret and somebody was sharing your secret. And
it was hard. It was so hard because I just felt like I didn't know what to do. I was so confused and I didn't have any direction and I felt like I didn't have anybody to talk to. I think that was the big thing. Even though I had so many people to talk to, I had no one who to actually really help me. And that way they were just listening ears, but no one to kind of give me advice and to direct me because I couldn't tell my parents. I didn't have any type of adult figure that I felt like I could feel comfortable telling this to at the time. So that's one of the reasons why I hid it as well. Who would I tell that wouldn't judge me? And I think that's what a lot of young people deal with. They deal with feeling like they're going to be judged, especially when they feel like, wow, I made this, I don't know, I want to say it's a mistake, but I did this thing. And are these people going to accept me now because I did this? Are they going to look at me differently? So there was a lot of different feelings going on in my mind around that time. And definitely I was just super, super scared and not knowing what to do and who to go to, who to trust.
I have like chills because I can't imagine what it would be like to be that age, be 6 months pregnant.
6 months, yeah.
You haven't told your parents yet. You're going to school day in and day out.
Yes.
Keeping on top of your schoolwork, everything else. And now you're faced with, I have to tell my parents. But the thing that's really upsetting to me is that you didn't feel like you had another adult to go to. And you were so alone, but you still had the strength to carry on day in and day out and go to school, because that takes strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. You got to have a strong backbone to be like, I'm going to go to school and I don't know if you have given that thought and really thought about it, how you were like all about strength, because I don't know if there's a lot of people that could handle that every day.
It was a lot because especially because kids are kids. So you're going to have a couple kids that are going to be a little bit not as nice, right?
Not nice. She's you're being nice. You're like, kids are kids.
Right.
Kids are kids. Kids are mean.
Right.
So we are going to continue our conversation with Kendra Hall when we come right back on TUTV, Temple University Television.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up, and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
You can achieve a lot using your imagination. I mean, I don't like to brag, but... Wait, who's that? And why is she all over these achievement awards? But with STEM, the sky's the limit. Shaboom! Use STEM to envision... Okay, I'm seeing it. Yeah. Invent...
Got any ideas?
I've got a few, actually. And create a better world.
Told you she's super smart.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
Because of you, I felt hopeless.
I know it was a joke, but it still hurt me.
Because of you, I felt wanted and not alone in this world.
Because you said hi to me on the first day of school, I felt included, and I knew that I was going to be okay.
Welcome back. We're talking with Kendra Hall about her personal struggles as a teen mom and how she created her very best life. So, but before break, we were talking about you were walking around for, 6 months pregnant and at school and not sharing it with your parents yet. Now I want to hear exactly what was it like.
It was rough. I would say it was very rough. When I told my mother, she just
told them separately or
I
together?
told my mother first because she was the first one home from work. And so when I got home from school, I remember walking in and I blurted it out. I'm pregnant. And she said, she looked very confused, like, what? And then she said, did you do something? And I said, I'm pregnant. And she just fell out. She just, it's like the strength left her body and she just crumpled on the floor and started sobbing uncontrollably. And that was like the worst feeling ever, number one, because I truly felt like a failure as a kid.
You already felt like
I did.
You
but
already
I
felt like
really
you weren't
bad.
loved. Now you're feeling like you're a failure.
I felt really bad, And then, then my father, he came home, and my mother told me that I had to tell him that I was pregnant, and she blurted out that I was. She said that I needed to tell him, and he was already on edge before I even said I was pregnant. He was already like, what is going on? What's happening here? So when I told him I was pregnant, he actually started to charge at me. Like he was gonna, I don't know, choke me. I don't know what he was gonna do. But I mean, I could imagine the anger that he felt as a parent. So he charged at me. My mother had to stop him and say, hey, calm down. And it was just such a tense moment at
That had to
that
be.
point. It was so tense. And so we sat
I
down.
can't even imagine what it would be like. You told your mom, she falls out. You tell your dad, he's charging after
He's
you.
enraged. He's enraged. And he told me that you're not having a baby here. You're not having a baby here in this house. You're not staying here. And he took maybe, I would say, about 10 minutes to figure out whether or not I was raped or molested. Those were the questions that he asked at that point. And when he found out that it was something that I had a boyfriend and all of that, that's when he just fully snapped and he called me a whore. He said he hated me. He said he should spit in my face. I mean, it was really bad. And then he told me I couldn't eat off the dishes anymore. He said I can't, until I go to the doctors and get a clean bill of health, he said I can't eat off of the dishes. I can only eat off of paper plates and cups and plastic cups. Yes, he was so serious too, because at the time, he had a different mentality. He just really was, he was extremely livid. It was just nuts at that point. I think he had lost it at that, really. And
I can't even imagine what that would feel like to have
it was
someone.
rough.
They were treating you like you were less than.
Oh, yeah.
Like a dog almost.
Oh,
like a dog on the
absolutely.
street. Like, you can't eat on our plates because we're gonna get, what did it, like you were dirty or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how my father treated me, and he truly felt like that. I believe at the time he truly did feel like that, because that to him in society, he's from a different era, and I think that he had a different thought process of what a woman or a young woman should be, and I think that played its part as well. That I didn't fit into the mold of this good little girl.
But everybody else did in your family, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so everybody else fit into the mold but you. So that's
Yes.
that's pretty. That's pretty hard too. There's a lot of sibling rivalry. All that. So all right. So you tell your parents you're eating off paper plates.
Right.
What's the plan?
The plan is,
Because I know they have a plan.
Yes, he had a plan. Exactly, you knew. So,
well,
we had an idea
Right.
that his plan was, he found a place. This was a couple of days later. I would say maybe a day or two, if that, maybe just a day. He found a place that was way out west, like Oklahoma or someplace where, and he showed me a brief clip, basically, of these young women wearing these long gowns, and they looked like it looked like it was something out of Little House on the Prairie in my mind, and then you live in this house and you give birth, you go through your pregnancy and you go give birth to your baby, and the baby goes straight to adoption, and then you come back like nothing happened. And so that's where he wanted me to go. He wanted me to go to a place where I give my baby up. He said, if you give your baby up for adoption, you can come back home and everything will be fine. But he didn't say baby. He said, give that bastard up for adoption. That's exactly what he said. And it was very nasty. So, and I didn't want to go there. I said, I'm not going to, I didn't want to give up my child. And he also, prior to that, I would say that that same day that I told them, they made an emergency appointment. So I went to the doctors and we found out that I was too far along to get an abortion, and they wanted me to get an abortion. That was their first step. So the second option was this place for me to go to.
So first of all, did you wait 6 months to tell them because you knew that would be their first reaction?
No.
Oh,
I would have probably waited until I gave birth.
Wow.
Honestly, I probably would have just, and you hear those stories on TV
Right,
about
you do.
kids who, I think that could have been me, honestly, because I was so scared and I didn't know what to do and I was so young. And they didn't have those places you could safe havens and all. And obviously I wouldn't do anything to my child, but just the fact that I probably would have been in a situation where I just let it go. If no one said anything.
You have incredible strength because
Absolutely. I feel it. I feel the strength inside of me because of you go through these trials and tribulations, and they make you into a stronger person. And if you don't learn the lessons, you won't get stronger. And I learned the lessons, and thank goodness I did.
You really did.
The hard way.
Well, you know, it's interesting when people say the hard way. I don't know if there is a right way. I don't know if there's an easy way or a right way, or a wrong way. I think it's our way.
I like that perspective.
You know, I think it's funny because people have said to me, you know, your life's been really hard and I've had a lot of issues, but is my life any harder or better or easier than anybody else's? I think that's what our journey is. That's why we're here. Our journey is to have bad, unfortunately. With dark comes light, and when we're down, we can see that we have to believe that there's light coming, you know, and that's the struggle. And I think that is what you and I both try to teach people, is that when life is tough, you got to remember to keep the eye on the prize, that as tough as it gets, it can always get better. It always gets better.
There's ebbs and flows in life, and we have to roll with it. So I totally agree with you.
So you're deciding that, no, you know, Dad, like even at the point that you're pregnant, you're like, no, Dad, I am not listening to you. I'm not going to that place. I'm going to have my baby.
No.
And he said,
you're getting out of this house.
So he kicks you out.
He kicks me out. I go and live with another family member for a short period of time, which was awful. I had to sleep on the floor in the basement. There was mice all over, in essence. So at night I had to cover myself with like covers, and like the mice would like bite around. It was awful. Like when I say I went from a Craftmatic bed.
Yeah, you told me that.
Floor in the basement.
I went from I mean, it's not funny, but
yeah, it was rough.
When you do your motivational speaking, I'm sure that's a big piece. You know, kind of adds a little levity to your situation. Went from a Craftmatic bed to praying that a rat didn't come and bite me.
And it was awful because at the time, you know, and not to get so much into it, when you're pregnant, you have milk. So you're lactating, so they're already coming. They smell you. They're coming. So, and I didn't have any experience with any rodents before, so this was like, whoa, you know. And I just was thrown in there into the situation I was living. I went from upper middle class to living in a poverty type of situation. I lived next to a crack house. I didn't know it.
Was there ever a point when you're going through this that you were like, okay, like, did you ever say, maybe I'll just go back to Dad and go back to
They wouldn't let me come home. I was no longer their child. My father told me I was no longer his child. He did not love me. I was not his child, and he hated me. And that was it. That's exactly what he said. So I was not his child in his mind.
Okay, so you go from this really, I don't want to say high-end, high-end?
More cushy situation
in essence. And so now you're living basically in a crack house, and your father
next to one.
Okay,
I wouldn't say living in it, but
next to a crack house.
And I never caught public transportation, so I had a family member who I was living with show me the bus route one time. I had to catch like 4 buses, 3 to 4 buses. I'm going to show you how to do this one time, and that's it.
And you were how old?
I was 13.
Public transportation.
I was 13.
Sorry, public transportation still scares me, so I can't even imagine.
Right, and
I'm
it's
like, if
scary.
I have to take a bus or somewhere.
I hadn't ridden a bus before. I hadn't even seen a corner store because we had to, ride our bikes
everywhere,
forever
right?
to get to a store.
So your whole life went.
Yes. So it was like totally like
So you were still going to
a
school?
shock.
So when you changed neighborhoods, did you have to
Yes.
still go back to your old school?
No, so I'm in a
Okay.
totally different town, an hour away
okay.
from where I was
Oh, okay.
from originally. And so I wound up being put into a school for pregnant teens and high school dropouts. So this is called a transitional school. And at this school, it's a total culture shock for me. So I'm at this school, and there's other pregnant teens, and I didn't see other pregnant teens before.
So it was your first time
It was
seeing-
my first time, besides me. So just speaking to them and understanding their life, which was totally different than any background that I had come from. And in addition to that, there were high school dropouts there. And a lot of these were men who were older. They were over 18. And so one of the things I speak about in the book too is that there was a gentleman there, I'm going to say gentleman, a man who took an extra special liking to me at the school. And he must have been at least 22. And at the time he was telling me he was like 16 or 17 and just really trying to weasel his way in. And this is where I really started to learn more about the wolves of life. And it came to a situation where he lured me with, we were going to go to get some food around the corner from the school, wound up luring me to a house and tried to rape me. So I had to deal with, and that was maybe a couple weeks after I started the school. So I had no street sense and street smarts in essence to even see these things, certain things coming at me. So I had to really fight in a lot of different ways, I would say.
All right.
It was
So
rough.
I was going to say, now we understand where you're incredible. I mean, what fortitude and strength at this young age, and you faced. Now you're practically homeless, right?
Yes.
You finished it. You finished school.
I did. Eventually, I finished school, right?
Okay. So you have your baby.
I had the baby. When my water broke, my family members dropped me off at their emergency room door and left me. So I had the baby by myself in the hospital.
Boy, girl.
A boy.
Baby boy.
I had a son. And so after a couple of days, nobody came. And at the last day of my discharge.
I'm just having a hard time wrapping my head around all this. It's like shocking to me how much strength you have to have gone through all that you have gone, and now here you are sitting here telling your story and sharing your story. Thank God.
Thank God.
That you're sitting here telling your story, because someone's going to
God.
watch the show or hear the show and maybe say, "Wow, she overcame that. We can all overcome what we have."
Correct.
So you have the baby.
Had the baby.
They drop you off at the hospital.
Dropped me off at the hospital, and I had the baby. I remember being in so much pain, and no one would give me pain medication because I remember the nurses, 2 in particular, saying to me that, "No, baby, you have to remember this pain so you don't do this again." Because where this hospital was at, all they saw was pregnant teens. And for me, I'm coming into this environment not even knowing that this existed.
Right.
And so they were desensitized to it in essence, into what my pain was, because they were thinking they're teaching me a lesson. So I had I would say a lot of adults at the time trying to teach me lessons, and all I needed was love. All I really wanted was a hug. All I really wanted was support. And that was one of the hardest parts for me as a young person, is getting a harsher lesson than what I've already been given.
Yeah, that's all we ever want, right?
Yeah, you kind of, sometimes I would say a lot of times we're just looking for that support. We're looking for someone to say, "Hey, it's going to be okay. These are some things that you can do. Let me help you to think out of this situation or to come up with solutions."
Think out of the situation.
Right? To critically
think. There is out of the situation.
There is an out. Not like a death sentence in essence to say, this is what you're going to be. This is what you're going to have.
Where do you
and
think
all
you
of
got
that.
your fortitude, though?
I would have to say, I would still have to say I got it from the first years of my life, being with my parents, those good 10, 12.
So those 10, 12 years
Right.
that they were like,
Boop, 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 boop.
made you strong.
Right.
You rebelled from that, but it made you strong, and now look at you today.
Right, exactly.
So just in essence of time, because I don't want to run out of time, and I want to make sure I get your whole story for everybody. You have the baby, you're out of the hospital.
I am, and not to tell the whole story, because I know I definitely, there's still so much to cover, but I wound up being in a situation with one of my aunts, and she was amazing. I love my aunt, but she was like only, in her early 20s, and I'm 14 at the time. I had my son 5 days after my 14th birthday. So I'm 14, and she's got to be like 22, and she has her first place.
She was the fun aunt.
She was a fun aunt, but now she started to have me hanging around her friends. So I just got there, and then she brings her friends over who are a lot older than me. I get a fake ID through them, and now they're whisking me off to all these clubs in New York. And now I have a different perspective about life, because
Now you're like, ooh,
hold on now,
New York City,
this is fun.
bright lights.
Bright light city. But again, there were and that's where you meet just different personalities that help to give you these even more lessons. But after that happened, that opened me up to more of what life was about, because I was able to go around New York. I had never been to New York on a fun, having this much fun. I think we went in school to the museum, but
I don't even, I don't even think I went to New York on the museum. I remember once going to New York, the first time ever in college.
Okay.
Going up the escalator, at Penn Station, thinking,
yes.
How do I get around? What do I do? It was
Right.
amazing. I still feel that complete in
love it.
awe when I'm in New York, right?
Right. But at the time, I think as a kid, it can really warp
Changes your perspective
It changes
on
your
life.
perspective about life, and you start to realize how big it is, and you start to recognize your independence even more. Now
Who's
that
watching
you've
the
been
baby
out home.
though while you're out
My
partying?
aunt.
Your
My aunt was.
Your aunt
My
was,
aunt was.
okay,
And
yeah.
then it was found out. My mother came by my aunt's house, even though, and she was trying her best to help as much as she could.
Your mom was?
My mom, because
Okay.
she didn't
So
have
she
the
was
support of
like-
my father at all.
Right.
He did not want her to go see me at all. So she tried her best to try to keep up with me as best as she could, without shaking in the house up, knowing there's three other kids in the house. She still has to appease my father and all of that.
She was doing what I always say. She was meeting you where she could meet you, doing the
Yes.
best that she could do, because that's what we all do. We all
Yes.
try to just do the best that we can do at the time that we know how to do it.
I
Like she
totally
didn't know
agree.
how to do anything else.
I truly feel like that. She did the best that she could, and so I wound up being whisked away. My mother wanted me to give my son up for adoption again. She approached me with that, and she said, "You don't need to have him. You're too young." And I said, "I'm not giving up my son." I wound up calling my son's father, and I wound up going to live with his family for a bit, and that was okay for a short while, and then he started to become more and more abusive. Now, I didn't realize even when we first started dating that he was being abusive. He was
You
he
never
would
do.
He was doing little things like play hitting in essence,
okay.
and it was started off with that, like a mushing and like in my face, and like that's what it's called. Like it's called, just kind of like grab. I'm like, what are you doing?
What do you mean a mushing?
It's
Like-
it's like
Oh, he
this.
takes your hand and does
right,
it?
putting your
Okay.
hand in somebody's face and that type. And he said, "Oh, I'm just playing with you," and I was like, I really don't, I don't like this. This is
Right.
no,
That's not how we play.
This is not. So, but it became more and more progressively more
And so
violent.
usually I say when there's physical abuse, there's usually emotional abuse. And
Correct.
that's really subtle.
Right,
That's
it was
that's
very
really
subtle. What to wear, what to
wear,
who to be around,
who you're going to talk to, what
Right.
you're doing. Yep.
Correct.
Been there,
And-
done that, right?
Yeah. So we wound up eventually having a place together, in which we shared with some of his family members who were over the age of 18. That was another big thing of housing when you're underage. How do you get housing? So
Oh, right.
you have to get people to sign for you, or you have to make it work. So we were able to have a place, and I was 16, he was 17 at the time, and we got into a huge fight. I don't even know what the fight was. It was it wasn't even something to whereas I think that it was more of a back and forth. It was more so him laying down the law in essence, and he wound up throwing me through a double glass window. And so when the first part of the glass, like I went through, and the second part, it was still up and kind of like jagged. And when I moved, the second part came down and it almost missed my neck, like barely missed my neck. So I was like, you know what? I have to go. I can't do this anymore. I didn't tell him that because he
Right.
would have, I don't know what would have happened. But that was the last straw. But even before then, it was progressively violent. I mean, I remember at 15 looking like Tina Turner in that movie, What's Love Got to Do with It? And I couldn't open my mouth. Like, he had punched me in my, like, he had, like, beat the crap out of me. And I couldn't even, like, say a sentence. That's how bad it was. So, I mean, I've had these different experiences with.
And look at you today.
I know.
And look at you today. So
yeah,
you had these bad experiences.
I did, but you know, and I remember reaching out to my father during this time, and he didn't want to have anything to do with me. He didn't care I was getting beat up. He did not care. And I had to really deal with these things by myself until I wound up going into the shelter situation. And one of my friends actually talked me into going into the shelter.
And it was at the shelter that you met the woman that changed your life.
Correct, Andrea. And I met Andrea, and she had been through so much. She actually had been raped by her uncle and had a baby by her uncle. She had been in different foster care. She had been abused as a child. Her mother was a drug addict, and she had been abused by her kid's father. She had just everybody was abusing her.
She took you under her wing.
She did. And she has
God bless her.
Thank
right?
God bless her. And she had, at this point, she had done a lot of, she was doing more inner work in essence. So she had learned about the power of the subconscious mind. She had learned the power of affirmations. She had learned about the power of speaking life into yourself. And she was ready to share that with somebody, and that somebody was me. So it worked itself out.
And now you share your message and the power of affirmations, which, by the way, I think I'm all about affirmations.
Yes.
And so for our viewers, I think you could just share some of, maybe do you have a affirmation that's you're like a walking, talking success story, right?
Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you.
I mean, to hear your stories and to have you sit here and share your stories with us is just absolutely huge. And I can't thank you enough, because I always say that I do this show for this very reason, because I want to share stories and I want people to know that there is life and that they can create the best life. And you have clearly created the best life for yourself.
I have. God has been good. I mean, I was able to go back to school. I wound up having 3 kids by the time I was 18. And I was able to push myself. I went back to school, got my degree. Actually, I have 2 degrees now. And I purchased my first house at 24. I really, really had to take into account who I was. And one of the mantras I use is, I don't compete for spots, I am the spot. I love that because it's so real. Another one I use is, all things lead to my success, wealth, and happiness, no matter what. I've even coined that
Say
and
that
put it
again,
on a
because
t-shirt.
that's a good one. Let's say it again so everybody hears it.
All things lead to my success, wealth, and happiness, no matter what. And that is something that you have to tell yourself, because all these experiences, the culmination of them, can turn you into somebody that you didn't even realize existed. Your authentic self. It excavates who you are.
What's your relationship with your parents today?
We have a great relationship now compared to how it was before. My parents have apologized to me. I've apologized to them for some things. And it's a much healthier relationship because I had to learn to forgive. And I think forgiveness is key. Otherwise, you're harboring on into these feelings, and you don't realize the weight that it takes on you. I've forgiven my son's father. You know, I've forgiven people who I feel like, maybe you didn't realize what you did, maybe you did. Either way, I can't hold on to it.
You can't hold on to it.
No. I can't hold on to these. I can't hold on to these ill feelings because they weigh you down, and it's not worth it.
I'm going to wrap it up right there and say those ill feelings weigh you down. My many, many thanks to Kendra Hall for sharing her experiences and insights. She shared her personal story and her inspiration about the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness simply means you're no longer allowing the anger, if the act of this person, to control your emotions towards them or you. It means letting go of and hold of the anger, the act that means not knowing you are greater than that hurtful act they did to you. Forgiveness means you're no longer being manipulated by its negativity. Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it looks upon it with compassion. Forgiveness breaks the cycle of hatred, anger, and pain that is often passed on to those. When you forgive, it is an act of self-love. It's not for the other person's sake. Forgiveness means acknowledging it for what it is, a journey that takes time. You are dealing with emotions that once had a strong hold on you, and now you're deciding that these emotions are no longer worth the emotional effort or time. You are making decisions to consciously leave these emotions behind you, allowing yourself to move on to better and greater things in your life. I'm Lisa Bien, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Your Best Life with Lisa. Hello, I'm Lisa Bien, and welcome back. Whether you're an empath or not, you have to work at making yourself happy, right? It's really about knowing yourself. A lot of it is really about knowing yourself. Books, friends, whatever you need. We're all going through stuff. We can all use extra support. You have to be brave enough to admit to yourself that I have the wrong people in my life. Then you have to be brave enough to want to make a change.